everybody, and welcome to the channel. I decided I was going to make a quick series on various things to upgrade your maps in Fortnite. There's hundreds of tutorials out there at this point, several channels you could look at, but kind of a personal desire on this one is I'm sick of seeing all the default death runs. So I'm going to be customizing this tutorial more for upgrading death runs than most other maps. Now, keep in mind, everything you learn here can be applied to any map out there, not just the death runs. It's just I enjoy that particular game mode, and I'd like to see more people make better quality maps. I think the only quality death run I've seen come out in the past year has been the ranked death run from Loser Fruit and some of the other power creators. But so quick breakdown. So in this video, we're gonna, or well, in this tutorial series, we're going to start with this video as an introduction of what's going to be covered and go over a few basic issues I see people have in these maps. Then next, we're going to be looking at custom materials in the next video, everything from bringing in custom textures to making your own from scratch. It won't be going into full detail because there's hundreds of options on the materials, but there's plenty of tutorials out there already on that. Again, this is a basic tutorial class on how to help new people that don't know anything about Verse or anything else upgrade their map. So this is going to be intended more for people who are just getting started and need to know the basics. Part 3, we're going to be looking at how to bring in custom skyboxes. If you're just trying to improve the quality of your map appearance-wise, this is one of the easiest things you can do is just a skybox. Some of my favorites include the Fantasy Castle Island skybox, which I will show here. You can get it on the Amazon, not Amazon, the Unreal Marketplace. It was fairly cheap, or there's plenty of websites out there you can get free ones. The next video coming out is going to be over how to move your props, which this is one of the biggest things I would like to see more people start doing. For death runs, it lets you have anything from custom elevators, rising up and down platforms, moving obstacles to dodge. If you were doing an RPG, it could be custom opening gates or working elevators or working sky platforms. You could be doing a tycoon game where your machines actually look like they're making something rather than just watching the counter go up and down. So it adds a lot more realism to your game modes, no matter what you're making. The next video will be going over verse tags, which again, there's plenty of videos out there on tags. However, I have not seen any tutorials on this since they updated it back in the fall, where the previous way of doing tags had been deprecated. So I'm going to be going a little bit into depth on the changes on that and how you can implement them currently. After that, the next video will be going over persistent data and how to save your progress between games. Now, people have been finding loopholes and various ways to make this work since UEFN was first released. You have the save point device in game, lets you track your inventory. So people have been just adding random things into players' inventory so to let them save various numbers. However, you can now actually code persistent data into Verse without having to do that. And I haven't seen too many people talking about that because it allows for a lot more flexibility and allows you to literally save any data set between games for each player. So it does require a bit more code, but it's a lot more versatile and something anyone's going to need to learn if they plan to actually do higher level maps in the future. Finally, and might seem kind of odd that I'll be saving this to the last video in the series, but it's just managing multiplayer and custom players. And I'm simply saving that till the end because not only is there already hundreds of tutorials out there over this, it's also one of the things that most people seem to struggle with understanding in the tutorials. So, you can watch them and just copy what they do and it'll run fine. But when you look into the comments on those videos, most people still have no idea how it actually works. So I want to save that one to the last so that we can get a grasp on some of the other basics before we get to there and that we can spend more time just discussing it. Now, I went ahead and just threw together a basic deathmatch map, which I'll put the code on the screen here. I mean, not deathmatch, a death run map. I'll put the code on the screen here, and it's nothing special in terms of gameplay. It's just a place where you'll be able to see everything we're making in this tutorial as we go along. The map is not 100% complete at the moment. I just went ahead and uploaded it with just enough stuff to cover the first few topics. And I think that's going to do for an introduction. So now let's start looking at some of the basic things I see a lot of people having issues with in these maps.
Okay, so one thing you have to keep in mind anytime you make a new map, especially for those that have been making death run maps in the past, is the game is a live service game. It will update. When was it? Was it chapter 3, I think, when they added the mantling and sprinting? That made a lot of old death run levels obsolete. So as people continued trying to make them, they suddenly were useless. Same thing has now happened with chapter 6. With the addition of the wall runs and the wall jumps and the rolling, there's a lot of levels that in the past were decent levels that you can now just straight up skip from new movement text. So just to cover those real quick, you do have the ledge jump, where you can now jump a full 3-block gap with a sprint jump, as long as you jump right at the edge. Also, you now have rolling. Previously, this simple-looking level would have been impossible, because you would have to land and then crouch before you could go to the little gap down there, at which the trap would kill you by that point. But now you can just roll through it. Alright, 2-block walls. Used to would require an impulse or a bouncer or something else to get up, but now you can just wall run up it. So these are all mechanics you're going to have to keep in mind as you're designing levels, is that the previous spacings of single block walls or double block jumps and such have now been updated. Even here, 3 blocks high. By combining wall jumps and wall runs, you can easily get all the way up. Whoop, messed up, sorry. 1. And there we go. Because you can chain them together up to 3. You can do 2 wall jumps and a wall climb, or 3 wall jumps, or bounce back wall run, wall climb, wall run, however you want to combo it, but you can do up to 3 in one run. And same thing here, another level that would have been impossible. How could you possibly get around that? Well, now it's easy. Similar thing here. How could you possibly get across? Well, ledge jump, 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 and you're over. And this is just, I know it's something that seems like it would be obvious, but we ran into the issue back, like I said, when mantling and sprinting got added, that for a good 6 months after that, people were making levels that were just skippable because they didn't include the new movement. So that's something you would need to keep in mind, is the movement text from chapter 6 that had just got added, plus the fact that in the future more movement abilities could be added that would require you to update your levels. Next thing I want to talk about is trap hitboxes and placements. If you notice this one glowing red right in front of us, all that means when you see one glowing red is that it is not placed correctly according to the system. Now, I will go ahead and say that at the moment, there is a bug with it. Normally, when it's glowing red, it cannot trigger, and anyone that's not glowing red should always trigger. But since the last update, there has been a bug. I've seen people in the forums showing images where literally their entire map was showing glowing red on the traps. So hopefully they'll get that fixed. But normally, yeah, like, see, that one's working fine, even though it's red. Same here. But normally, anytime you see one glowing red, you would have to go back to the editor and readjust it. So now that we're back in the editor, this is the same trap we were just looking at in the game. If you notice these red lines on the boxes, that is the hitbox for it. That's why you can sprint jump over it, and until your feet touch the top of this barrier, it doesn't trigger. But let's look at getting it to not glow red, because like I said, that should indicate a problem with the placement. That was it. You just move it and it's fixed. A lot of times what'll cause that is your grid snapping up here. If you have this turned off when you place the trap, sometimes the system won't register where it's supposed to be. So just as a good practice to avoid that, I would always have that turned on when you are placing a trap. But again, to fix that, all you have to do is move them. See? Simple enough. But again, on the map I uploaded, I left that in just so people can see the difference. But normally, you want to have all of your traps and other devices not showing errors before you upload a map. And same thing on the sideways one here with the hitboxes. You see the blue lines here. So you can walk this path right here and it'll never trigger, never reach you. So always pay attention to the hitboxes on your devices.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about on here is people overusing triggers. One thing I've noticed when people first start trying to learn verse is they feel overwhelmed by all the different devices you can use. And so there's a habit for people to just only use triggers within verse and then connect those triggers to devices within the game, which, while this does work, it leads to some other problems. I'm sure a lot of y'all have either run into the issue or seen people talking about it with the optional agents and the maybe agents. That's probably the most common question I see in comments on tutorial videos is asking why it won't work. Why do I have to put a question mark with my agent? What is an optional? And all of that is caused by the triggers or other devices that can be activated by things other than agents. So I guess I'll go ahead and give a quick overview on that. Essentially, an agent is basically anything that is moving within your map on its own, whether it be a player, an NPC, or even wildlife. Anything that is going around interacting with things is an agent. And so most devices can only be used by agents. However, triggers and a few others are different, and they can be triggered by anything. You could tie any action, any interaction to a trigger. And so when a trigger is activated in verse, it doesn't know what caused it to trigger, just that it triggered, which is what's called an optional agent or a maybe agent, as you would see in the documentation. So before you can actually use the information that came from that trigger, you would first have to check, is this an agent? Is where that confusion comes in. So it adds a lot of extra code, a lot of redundant work, and a lot of unnecessary confusion. So I know new people do get overwhelmed. There's a lot of devices in there to work with, and some of them do have different methods for using them. But I would recommend not using triggers any more than you absolutely have to. Because as long as you're using the correct device that already utilizes an agent, you never have to mess with the if maybe agent statements in the first place. I mean, it's a good thing to learn how that works, and we will cover that later. But that's where a lot of the problem runs into is they're just using unnecessary devices because rather than taking the time to find the correct device. So I wanted to go ahead and point that out that overusing triggers is a common issue I keep seeing people do. Okay, so that's going to do it for this first video with the introduction. We'll be back next time to start talking about how to make custom materials, custom textures, how to bring in image assets from other programs. Since this is something I'm just doing in my spare time to try and help people out, I can't promise how often I'll be able to update. I'm hoping to be able to put out at least one tutorial a month, maybe more, depending on how things go. Hopefully it helps some people out. If it does, hey, glad I could help. If not, sorry, I tried. But y'all have a good one. See you next time.